The Tudor conquests of Ireland in the 1500s would spell the end of the old Gaelic ways in Ireland. This video looks at two of the dwellings used by the old Irish clans at this time. The stone-cut Towerhouse struck a sharp contrast with the rustic traditional Ringfort. Over 2,000 Towerhouses still survive in Ireland, with a large concentration in the west of Ireland. Towerhouses were built for residential and defensive purposes by powerful Gaelic families. These large, imposing Towerhouses were expensive to build and made a strong statement about the clan's wealth and status.
No tower house is ever the same. However, a typical tower house was constructed as follows.
The first floor was used for storage. The second floor was a living space for the servants and guards. Straw or heather was spread on the floor to sleep on, with typically no furniture. The third floor was for food preparation and a living space for the servants and guards. The fourth floor was the sleeping and living space for the chieftain and his family. The fourth floor may have had an arched stone roof supporting a stone floor above. This floor acted as a sanctuary, as the stone floor was a fire break from the fire in the lower floors. The fifth floor was the great room where the chieftain ate and entertained. Windows at the lower levels were vertical arrow slits, but the windows in higher levels were safer and thus larger to allow in more light.
Many front doors were constructed of two layers of thick Irish oak. One layer would be 90 degrees to the other, with the boards riveted together, with the wood grain of both panels going in different directions, meant that the door was not easily split open.
Many doorways also had a murder hole in the ceiling of the entrance, through which the defenders could shoot, throw, or pour harmful substances. Battlements also had a projecting feature called a matriculation, which was an opening through which stones or other materials such as boiling water or oil could be dropped by the defenders on the attackers at the base of the castle. This castle in West Cork is owned by the English actor Jeremy Irons. He restored the castle over a 6-year period in the late 1990s. The walls were plastered or rendered with a mixture of ferrous sulphite used in iron filings with lime wash, which oxidized to give an ochre colour. Some critics stated that the castle should have retained a grey stone facade, but some evidence has suggested that some castles were rendered on the outside and painted using available dyes. This castle is called Glenina Castle and is a fine example of a tower house with an L-plan footprint, giving it the ability to defend the entrance door by providing covering fire from the adjacent walls. It was built in the 1500s in the far north of the Burren in County Clare, in which there are over 230 such castles in the county. This castle was owned by the O'Loughlin clan, who controlled large tracts of land in the Blarney of the Burren, reflecting the warfare and instability brought about by the various power struggles in medieval Clare. But in Tudor times, many Gaelic nobles submitted to the crown and the Protestant religion, and in return were allowed to keep their lands. However, the O'Loughlins lost their lands and castle in the 1600s. In contrast, the Ringfort is very common in the Irish landscape, with over 45,000 examples recorded. In general, they were used from 400 AD to 1100 AD, but were still in use in independent Gaelic regions of Ireland as late as the 1600s. Indeed, the Wicklow chieftain and rebel Fiach Mac O'Byrne was thought to have lived in one until his death in 1597.
Fiach had a great victory over the English, which I have covered in a previous video, and I leave a link to it at the end of this video.
They were not military forts, but rather enclosed farmsteads.
For example, in the case of Fiach, during an English raid, a drum was sounded by mistake on the approach of the English soldiers. And Fiach and his clan fled rather than to stand fighting behind the Ringfort's limited defences.
The principal structure found within the Ringfort consisted of a domestic roundhouse of timber construction with wattle walls and a thatched roof. This was accompanied by a suite of other structures that included dairies, workshops, corn drying kilns and animal shelters. The enclosing bank generally had a deep ditch or fosse on its outside. The bank, when newly built, would have had either a palisade of timber posts or a post and wattle fence. This was necessary to keep marauding animals such as wolves from attacking the family livestock. It also provided protection against cattle raiders, and Ireland had for centuries been a cattle economy. In the case of Fiach's Ringfort, it appears he also had a surround of a strong blackthorn or whitethorn hedge to make it difficult to breach.
A report from the English written just after the incident described above mentions how the English, quote, cut down the plashed wood near the house of Fiach.
In regions with abundant stone, a variant of the Ringfort is known as the cashel. It differs from the conventional Ringfort in that it has a stone-built enclosure instead of the more common earthen bank, and in many cases they were truly ancient, with some thought to date to the late Iron Age or as far back as the Bronze Age. Some Ringforts had underground chambers called souterrains located beneath them. These features are thought to have functioned as places of refuge or escape in event of attack. However, the majority were probably used as storage areas for perishable foods, functioning as cold or dry areas. Ireland's Ringforts would ultimately be protected by the superstition that the abandoned Ringforts were taken over by the fairies to become fairy forts, a respect and belief still held today.
In the latter 1500s, many lords would begin to build fortified houses, which were longer or linear, delivering greater living space than the vertical confines of the Tower House. And again, I have a previous video on this subject. But for the moment, thank you for watching, thank you for your support, and I hope to be back soon.